Turret characters are a staple of the hero shooter genre, starting with Engineer in TF2 and all of the iterations up until now in Marvel Rivals. Now, if you are an avid player of hero shooters, you may understand that turret characters are not always the most fun or the most engaging, because trying to level the power in the turret and also the interactivity with the turret sometimes can just make them feel very annoying to fight against, but also not very engaging to place down and play with. And I think that is a bit of a problem, especially, in Overwatch. I'm not going to try and talk about Overwatch too much in this video. I want to focus on the actual designs here, as they are. But, Torbjorn and Symmetra, they're very much so place and forget type turrets. Torbjorn in particular. Sim does have like the slow and the ability to see through walls, but to be honest, I don't think they're very how do you say, interesting. That's not really making you think really about where your turrets are placed in particular and what you're doing with them at any one time. And actually, I will circle back to those two at the end of the video, trying to give some suggestions about how to fix them with the knowledge from Marvel Rivals. But with that being said, let's start with Namor. Namor is the classic turret character in this game. And I think what is really important to know about with Namor is that the turrets he has multiple, right? He can throw down multiple. He can throw two, and if he has Luna Snow, he can actually throw three, one of them being its own interesting thing. It has like the slow, where it does some kind of freeze effect as well. But the best part about his turrets, I think, in comparison to a lot of them I see, is that you can throw them in a lot of different places. It really opens up your angles and your playmaking potential in that regard. But another thing that I really like about these turrets is that they go away. That they actually aren't, what's it called? They aren't permanent, right? So after a couple of seconds, the turret will go away. Not only is the increased placement positioning value important with these, it's also the timing, which I think is really, really interesting, right? I could always have one turret up at a time, or two turrets up at a time, but they could shoot them both before they're gone, or they'll both, if I put one down then the other one down, by the time they're both gone, I actually can only put up one more, right? So there's actually a bit of resource management when it comes to Namor, because eventually these turrets are going to go down and you are going to have to live with not having the most value. And I think that's really interesting with his turrets, is that you can't have the full turret value up all at once. That is crucial to me. I think that's really key, because of that, I think it means that you can't put that much power into each individual turret. One, because if you have two turrets up at one time, it might be too powerful. But at the same time, what's it called? What comes out of that is that you can have a little bit more power in Namor himself. Now, he's got complete invulnerability, and he can go, he can use it to get up to high grounds and kind of float down and everything. I'm not going to claim that he has the most interesting kit overall. I want to make that clear. But I think where this gets really interesting is his right click. So I'm going to throw my turrets down, and then I'm going to right click. Now the turrets are actually doing more. Do you see them? They're kind of like, their fire rate went up, and they looked at the thing that I was shooting, right? So I'm pretty sure the turrets naturally do this. I think maybe they just go to the closest thing. No, they do. They naturally shoot at what you're shooting, but they kind of get powered up when you hit this right click. And I think the best part about that is that it is a skill shot. So part of them doing everything correctly is that you are hitting your cooldowns and hitting your abilities to get the most value out of them. And while this is on, pretty short cooldown, if I use this like this, I'm only getting so much value out of my turrets because I only have one up. But then I can throw the next one down, and then this is really when I wanted my value, right? You see I barely got value out of that one. I think it's an interesting, timing, trying to figure out, is it worth it to put both my turrets down and shoot somebody like this so I can get, the max value out of it? Or can I try and keep it as consistent as possible, be more of a thorn in the enemy side, more so than just, trying to get this insane damage. I think that is a really interesting concept that it makes Namor, who is, again, not the most interesting character in the game, but it does really increase his, what's it called? It increases his fun factor. Whenever I'm doing challenges, and like one of the challenges about Namor, I'm actually not like rolling my eyes like I do about some other characters like Torbjorn, unfortunately. I'm actually like, this is fine. I can play a game or two on Namor. There's nothing wrong with that. It's pretty simple. It's pretty effective. But there is a lot of thought to it, and I do really appreciate that. I think that is a really good aspect of this character that his contemporaries in other games don't necessarily have. But Namor is the turret character. But I want to talk about the other turret character in this game, because he is a lot more interesting, and you may not even kind of consider him as a turret character until you really sit down and think about it. That is Loki. Loki is one of the most inspired designs in this entire game. I am a really big fan of Loki because I think he is really, really interesting. So obviously he is a support, but his turrets are not traditional turrets that just kind of seek, they see somebody and they shoot them, right? He gets to place them down wherever he wants. So you've got that one, or you can place one where you are and then go invis, right? But the thing about his is that they shoot where you shoot, right? So not only are you managing the position of the turrets, trying to keep a good LOS on everybody at one time, but they also have their own health. Now, these don't go away after a certain amount of time. They go away when you replace them. So I can put one over here and my first one's going to go down. I can only have 2 clones out at a time. But again, they only shoot where you can shoot. So if I put a turret, or I put one all the way up here, right, and I try and shoot this guy, well, I'm only getting half value. So positioning is really, really important, especially dynamic positioning, right? So you really have to think about, where am I going to get the most angles, the most value, the most pressure to make them look at other angles, right? So let's say somebody is walking through that choke, not that choke, this, oh my God, it's so sensitive. That choke, they're coming through that way, and they're going to see both of my clones, right? They're going to see this clone and this clone, right? So they're going to walk in. I'm going to shoot them. They are going to shoot this Loki clone, right? Okay. Then they get rid of him, whatever. As they walk in, I can throw another clone down and make them continue to look at it, right? Now, there is a lot of like time in between clones, so you can't just keep doing this forever and ever. But in the middle of the fight, there is a lot of management that they have to do, considering the Loki clone. And while every individual Loki clone is not very powerful, if you are not aware of where they are in the middle of the fight, that is when things start stacking up and the damage and the healing become a little too much to bear, right? And any amount of time taken to shoot the clones instead of people on your team is also sustained value, and good value for your team as well. So I think it just in that regard, interacting with the clones is super duper fun. But then you have to bring in his other abilities. First off, there's his left shift, which, or I don't know what the actual key binding is. I swapped them all around, but this one swaps his position with one of the clones. So basically he puts a clone where he is, and then he takes over where his clone was. This puts a lot more active management on your clones. I've actually, wait a minute, some of them did go away, but they stay for a very long time. But this puts a lot of active management on your clones, right? So their position is just as important, not just because of like being able to shoot and do all of that, but it's also your escape option, right? That is a really interesting dynamic where wherever your Loki clones are is where you're going to be able to escape. Now, also, he does have his invisibility, which throws a clone down. But when you are in invis, which I think this is really important with Loki, you can't shoot. You can't do anything. Your clones are actually worthless. So the invis, yes, you can, start a fight in invis. Yes, you can go invis in the middle of the fight, but that is a much more like, it's not a riskier option. It's actually a better option for your survivability because it heals you up, but it's worse for your team, right? Because your clones are not allowed to heal. And I think that's really crucial. And I really like this design, is that the clone value is always determined around Loki's value, right? Not only is it mechanical skill, which is really interesting and fun, because you have to aim where they go, but also you have to leverage your own health and your own, survivability with making sure your team is up and ready to go. So yeah, it looks like his clones do go away after a long amount of time, but it's not enough. You get them back fast enough so where it probably won't matter if you've got active management of your clones. But that is a really interesting fact. Now, the other really cool thing about his kit is the other ability. So I'm going to throw this clone over there, and actually I'll throw this one here, and then I'm going to hit my other ability, which heals up. It kind of like, I don't exactly remember everything about it. It's kind of like a pain split. It basically functions as an immortality field around all of your Loki clones at one time. What is really important about this is that he can actively like make plays with this, because he can throw his clones and throw it down, or he can swap positions and then throw it down, like get invuln next to somebody and then throw it down next to them, right? There's so much you can do with this. And they're all individually breakable. So yes, it is kind of like an immortality field, but I don't think it is powerful, yes, but I think it's pretty like easy to track, easy to play around. And breaking Loki clones will prevent that from happening, which I think is really key, right? Because Baptiste, it's like very throw it on the ground and then you have to react to it. But with Loki, you can be a lot more proactive, right? If you're proactive with breaking his turrets, then you're also going to be proactive with denying those super powerful abilities, which I think is also really, really interesting. Now, with the same thing, what I was talking about with invisibility, his ultimate, which is, just a duplicate type ultimate, again, you can't use your Loki clones while you're in your ultimate. So going into your ult is a really, what's it called? It's a bit of a risky play, right? Even though you do get a really powerful ult right away, depending on who you pick, you are also giving up your regular healing resource. So is it worth it just to get, a better ult? Like I just picked Luna Snow, right? She's another healer. Maybe I just want to have the Luna ult and then go back to my job, or maybe I'm going to try and get on the offensive and do something like that. And since you're guaranteed an ult, that's a really interesting way to do it. And since you're guaranteed an ult, if you die in the ult, you die, it doesn't matter, right? You're not going back to Loki mode, you're going back to the grave, which I think is also a really good way to balance that as well, because it means that Loki can't just stop and go back to healing. Like, he really has to commit, like, this is what I'm doing, right? The Loki clones I'm not going to have Loki value for however long the duplicate lasts. Maybe, I think it's like 15 seconds or something. That's a really interesting decision. I think Loki makes so many cool decisions with his turrets. He's just so interactive, right? There's so many minutia things that you have to worry about when you are playing this character, trying to get the most value out of him, that the mastery on this character is going to take super, super long to actually get into. And I do really appreciate that about Loki. So basically, with looking at these two characters, kind of what are like the best parts of it? Interactivity with your turrets, being able to use them more often, being able to do something with them, right? I think also allowing the aim skill as part of, a lot of the turrets are pretty much auto aim in a lot of games. And that is part of the appeal, but being able to show off your mechanical skill as well, kind of supplementing that damage with your own kind of ability, I think is a really good gameplay loop where you have consistent damage, but if you're really good, you can have those moments of popping off, which I don't think a lot of turret characters typically do, like the ones in Overwatch who we're about to talk to. So yes, interactivity with the turret, I think is a really good way to do it. I think turrets being not as powerful, or like the most powerful thing in the kit, like the super overbearing thing, that is also really, really good. Each turret being de-emphasized, I think, is really good with playing around them, right? It makes playing around them much more fun, much more engaging in that department. So that is where I stand on the Marvel Rivals turret characters. I think they are super good, but I am going to swap it over to Overwatch really quickly because I do want to talk about how I think we can take some of this and improve Torbjorn and Symmetra at least a little bit. All right, so in Overwatch here, let's start with the classic turret man himself, Torbjorn, right? So Torb's kit is very, very simple, as we know this. His turret goes down, builds itself, and just starts shooting, right? That is it. That is all there is to it. Once Torb can break it himself and puts it on its cooldown, and then his enemies can break it, right? That is really all there is to the turret, and that is, half of his abilities. His other ability is Overload, which gives him some overhealth, and it makes him fire faster, right? That's it. That is Torbjorn in an extent. He is just a spammy character, and he plays at range, and I think that is just really boring. I think Torb turret is, again, it's the worst example of like just place and forget. Yes, you want to make sure you have it on like a good angle, something as a distraction, but at the end of the day, it's going to get broken, and then it's going to be gone for 12 seconds, and its cooldown is just not going to, it's not going to be, you know, it's going to feel bad once that's down, right? You're just kind of like regular old Torb. Now, I think there are a couple ways that you could do this, and I'm not going to go into the multiple turret route because I think Symmetra is that character that has the multiple turrets. So I want to kind of increase the interactivity with the one turret. Now, I do think that having it on a lower cooldown, probably a good thing. And also, I think, you know, being able to just throw it down while it's, what's it called? While it's firing, you know, I understand why that limitation is there, but I do think being able to like reposition it, in the middle of a fight is probably more fun. So just being able to throw another one down while it's in active use, I think would also go a long way. But basically, you know, Torbjorn, apart from just shooting what Torb is shooting, there isn't much you can do to interact with the turret. So using Torb's kit and not like really reworking this character, why does the turret not also power up when you power up in Overload? I think that is like the easiest way to get more value out of this character, to have like more of a power spike. Now, you know, the problem is putting too much power, giving him too much power, whatever. But I do think that giving Overload another like use, because right now it's pretty much purely defensive. Yes, it gives him more attack speed, but at current, like, what's it called, value, I think it's much more value to get defensive, use it defensively. I stumbled over my words there, but what if it did more? Maybe it attacked faster. I think, though, what if it did something different? Maybe it started doing higher burst damage. Maybe it does a slow. Maybe it does some kind of status. Maybe it lights them on fire. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that you could do this. I think the slow is probably like the best way, because then it kind of interacts with his Overload a bit better, because then Torb is faster and he can run people down, and not have to play so backline, whatever, but he can keep them in whatever his grasp. And then that puts a lot more pressure on actually breaking the turret. But if Torb, you know, does this too early, then it's going to be easy to kite around it and all of that. I think that's like one easy way that you could do that. Just add some extra effect to the turret while Torb is in Overload. I also do think that maybe the turret power that is one thing, right? I think that's one thing. But also, you could do it that the turret, you know, since the turret, what's it called? It shoots at enemies in whatever enemy you're shooting, right? But what if it shot at enemies differently depending on the mode that you are in, or the fire type that you did? So please go up there. Okay, awesome. So let's say, for example, it has its passive just regular, right? But if I shoot this guy with my primary, it does one thing. And if I shoot this guy with my shotgun, it starts doing a different thing, right? So it actually effectively gives the turret 3 different modes of fire, more utility, but it's determined on what Torb is doing. And then that would also make it kind of interesting, where it's like, okay, so I shoot this guy and I shoot him multiple ways, right? I actually am encouraged to use both of my abilities, even if they aren't the best damage wise for the job at that time, but I need the shotgun value on this guy. Am I crazy? I feel like the turret already shoots what you're shooting. Maybe you couldn't see it, but it should shoot what you're shoot what you're shooting. I think that is the more interesting. Yeah, there it goes. The more interesting way to do it. But yeah, so then it's like, okay, well, this isn't the best range to use a shotgun at, but like, I want the value that it gets from the shotgun. Of course, it would do it over like, I don't know, like half a second, because, you know, you can just fire them really quick after one another. But, you know, some kind of status effect, maybe different types of damage. That could be one thing. I don't know. I think there's a lot that you could do with it, but I do think that would put a lot more like interesting engagement into Torb's like moment-to-moment gameplay feel, which I think he has been sorely lacking for a very long time. You know, bring back some of that, like, you know, a lot of people really want the engineering feel, and I think that's just kind of a relic of the past, unfortunately, but bringing back some more interactivity with this turret in some capacity, I think would go a very long way of making Torb feel a lot better. So yeah, that's what I've got for Tor, but let's go to Symmetra, because Symmetra again is, she's got a little bit of utility on her turrets. But I feel like there's a really simple solution that you could do to make Sim a lot more engaging and also make her turret placement a little more dynamic, or at least, follow her a little more. So Symmetra is the build-up character, right? She builds up her beam, and on top of that, she should be having the turrets down that will, you know, supplement her damage as well. She can potentially shred people a lot. The thing about the turrets, though, is that you really want the turrets out before people are there, because they're, you know, they come with the slow, right? They come with utility, and that kind of makes them feel a little linear to me, since they're super easy to break. They need to be up in a spot that people don't know about. And that is just like, it's pretty difficult to use them in any more creative ways than that. So I think the easy solution here is, what if her beams, and of course damage would be adjusted overall, but what if her turrets scaled with her beam charge? So as I build up, now I'm on level 2, my turrets are doing more damage. And then when I go to level 3, my turrets also do more damage. Perhaps they do more slow, stuff like that. But the reason why I think that would be a cool idea is because then that kind of allows Sim to, like, okay, I can have some turrets out initially for slow, for utility, but then in the mid-fight, when I get my turrets back, you know, I can actually throw them on the ground, and then they'll do more damage, right? They're going to be a lot more of a threat. That's actually going to cause people mid-fight to, like, look on the ground and be like, oh, I see the turret going, I need to break it before it hits the ground, or we're going to be screwed, right? And that is actually going to allow Sim to create a lot more distraction. I think that's kind of part of the turret character design, right? It's distraction, it's angle creation, and Sim does not really have that on her kit as it stands. So being able to actively, like, kind of interact with the turrets in that regard, make them much more of a threat mid-fight, something to deal with, I think could be a really interesting, simple solution as well. And of course, you know, since her turret is super, like, what's it called, or her regular beam is super close range, I don't think turret bombing like this is going to be much of a threat, because by the time they all go through, I don't have any charge. You could change that if you wanted to, but yeah, that's like one simple way that I think that you could do it. I honestly don't really have that many other ideas. I don't think making them do a different function as it scales with her beam damage, so like level 1, level 2, and level 3 all do like a different status or something. I think that's really clunky and dumb, unless it took longer for her beam to charge up and it was easier to track. It had some kind of UI element, so it's like, I actually want to stay on level 2 here, so I'm going to just kind of like keep my level 2 charge barely, you know, and then fire out my turrets in level 2, right? Let the turrets do the work. So there's sometimes we want to let you do the work, and sometimes you want to let the turrets do the work. Sometimes you're just trying to charge your beam all the way up. Sometimes you're trying to keep it in a certain spot, maybe add more gameplay dynamics to Symmetra in that regard as well. Anything, right? And of course, like, balance and what it actually does, that's all up for debate, but I'm just trying to get the juices flowing about the interactivity here. So with all of that being said, I hope that you kind of see the idea behind, like, what I think makes a good turret character, because I think Marvel Rivals does a really good job in that department of making them more interesting, and I think Overwatch could definitely learn a couple of lessons there, a little bit of homework copying, because as it stands right now, these are two of like my least played characters in the game, the characters I just do not want to touch at all, because I don't find them very interesting. I don't find them very interactive. Especially Torb. Like, Sim is one thing. I don't like Sim because she's just kind of weird, and I don't think she fits into the game very well, but Torb is just boring, and I don't think a lot of people will disagree with that. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe. I do really appreciate it. And let me know down below, what are your other favorite turret characters in any kind of game? I've never played like Paladins or other shooters. I'm trying to think, like, I'm sure like Siege has some kind of like turret stuff in some regard. So please let me know down below. Like the video while you're at it too. And I stream live twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. This is going live on Thursday, so I will be live at 2 p.m. playing 6v6, maybe playing a little bit of Marvel Rivals. We will have to see. And join my Discord down below if you want to talk all things Overwatch and Rivals down there as well. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching, and please have a good day.